The global economy relies on a massive, steady flow of base elements to build anything of value. Deep within the Andes, Peru sits on an astronomical reserve of gold, silver, and copper, the exact resources required to manufacture everything from smartphones to modern military hardware. Yet the country treats this immense leverage with complete apathy. The national economy runs on autopilot, tearing raw minerals out of the ground and loading them directly onto cargo ships at rock-bottom prices. These containers are shipped off to third-party processors in China, Russia, and the United States. Those foreign powers handle the refinement, turning Peruvian rocks into the advanced technology and weapons that secure their own geopolitical dominance. A nation that operates without a strategic domestic agenda effectively surrenders its leverage, regardless of how much wealth sits under the soil. You can possess all the physical capital in the world, but if your leadership treats the nation strictly as a passive extraction point, you are simply subsidizing the ambitions of smarter, hungrier countries. For decades, the expectation was that a specific demographic would step up to steer the country. In Peru, they are colloquially referred to as the San Borginos, an upper-middle-class generation groomed from birth to inherit the levers of power. They were handed every academic advantage available, attending elite institutions like Universidad Católica and ESAN, eventually collecting advanced degrees from places like Stanford and Wharton. As the old political dynasties faded and polarizing figures like Alan García left massive voids in governance, this highly educated class was perfectly positioned to take control and modernize the state. Instead of governing, they retreated. While populist forces like Alberto Fujimori capitalized on the vacuum to reshape the country's social fabric, the educated elite built comfortable lives in exclusive, walled-off suburbs, completely ignoring the public sector. Elite degrees did not produce the visionary leaders the country required. They merely engineered a highly insulated demographic that prioritized personal comfort and abandoned their national duty. There is a distinct, often misunderstood gap between acquiring technical. We can see this dynamic perfectly illustrated in the 1980s South American rock music scene. Peru produced dozens of incredibly talented underground bands, heavily influenced by imported West Coast tracks, playing complex, highly skilled music. Meanwhile, Argentina was producing music that was often simpler, leaning on folk rock roots. That the Argentine bands had something the Peruvians entirely lacked: ruthless managers executing aggressive, export-driven strategies. By packaging their acts and pushing them outward, Argentine managers propelled bands like Soda Stereo out of local clubs and onto a massive global stage, dominating markets as far north as Mexico. Raw talent and formal training will always stagnate locally unless they are driven by a mechanism built to project power and secure a wider territory. When you scale that dynamic up to the level of geopolitics, the consequences of lacking a strategy shift from lost record sales to lost sovereignty. In the late 19th century, Chile realized its economic survival depended on securing the resource-rich coastlines directly to its north, like Antofagasta. While Bolivian and Peruvian leadership remained distracted, Chile aggressively expanded its borders, severing Bolivia's access to the sea and annexing 3 Peruvian provinces. That same passivity dictates the modern era. Today's elite class operates strictly as third-party administrators, happily facilitating the extraction of national wealth for foreign superpowers. Nations that function as passive administrators rather than strategic actors often find their resources and territories integrated into the agendas of their more ambitious neighbors. Modern political classes often confuse administrative bureaucracy with actual statecraft. They generate bulleted government agendas using ChatGPT or Perplexity, presenting automated lists of policy as a substitute for real strategy. A genuine national vision requires a fiercely protective, sometimes unpopular, commitment to securing a country's long-term dominance and survival against competing nations. Love them or hate them, polarizing figures often ascend to power because they project an unwavering, self-interested vision for their country's commercial and diplomatic boundaries. In regions defined by existential conflict, leaders survive by ruthlessly prioritizing the physical and strategic protection of their own populations, treating external criticism as secondary to national continuity. Relying on an MBA or administrative polish creates a dangerous illusion of competence, leaving a state entirely defenseless when forced to negotiate with foreign powers, playing a much more aggressive territorial game. When the demographic trained to govern abdicates that responsibility, the resulting power vacuum actively decays the state from the inside out. The retreat of the educated elite left the political doors wide open, allowing opportunists and radical factions to take charge of a complex economy they were entirely unprepared to navigate. The last 2 decades have been defined by institutional rot, culminating in administrations that hand over vital port infrastructure to foreign governments while paying themselves astronomical congressional salaries. A political vacuum never remains empty for long. It is always filled rapidly by whoever is most willing to exploit the broken machinery for their own immediate gain. Formal education and upward mobility fail to protect a nation when those with the credentials choose private comfort over national responsibility. The global industrial machine continues to extract the country's wealth on autopilot, while the very people trained to stop it sit quietly in their gated neighborhoods, pretending the crisis won't reach them. They were handed the education and the capital required to build a lasting fortress. Instead, they chose to construct a delicate glass bubble, and the cracks are finally starting to show.